Hey guys, what I want to talk about today is deeply personal. It's something that I really learned a lot from. Now that I look back at it, I've grown so much. So I really wanted to talk about something like this. Growing up, I hated being Asian. I never really said it out loud, but deep down, I just wanted to be anything different, anything other than being Asian. I think the main reason is because I really just wanted to blend in. To give a little context, I grew up in Nairobi, Kenya. I went there when I was like in elementary school, around 5th grade. Back then, I didn't really even know who I was, being so young, and that was even before puberty. So when I went to Kenya, I hit puberty and I met so many different people from different backgrounds. So that's how I started forming my identity when I was in there. And the school that I went to was this American international school. People from more than 50 different countries attended. So it was a very diverse and dynamic community that I grew up in. And all I ever really wanted was just to fit in. Since a young age, I didn't live with my family, right? Because I had to go to Kenya, I lived with the guardians there who I wasn't really, too close with. And having this introverted personality, I had trouble really getting along with people that I lived with. It's crazy because the place or the environment that I was really in had this westernized view, right? So I started finding discomfort in small little things. I didn't really like bringing my lunchbox to school because being a Korean kid at home, they would pack me rice with Korean side dishes like kimchi and stuff like that. When you put them in the box like that, by the time when you're about to have lunch, the smell kind of marinates in there, right? So it's like when you open up your lunchbox, you can smell the strong odor of the food. And at that time, that was something that I really didn't feel comfortable with because a lot of the people around me would jokingly just be like, scrunch their nose saying, hey, that food smells a bit, and just kind of make fun of it. But I'm not really saying that was like a bad thing because it was a joke, right? But even those little things that didn't really seem that big had a huge impact in me because I didn't want to be looked at as different. I think growing up in Korea where it's more homogeneous, the culture, where a lot of the people have the same roots and the ethnicity is not too variant, so it's not too fluctuating. You're pretty much surrounded by Koreans. Nowadays, it's a little bit different, where you can see a lot of different ethnicities in the student population. But back then, I didn't really find anything wrong with being myself because a lot of the people around me looked the same. I didn't have any problem with that. But when I came to Kenya and started interacting with people in different languages, I started getting really insecure of my own roots. I felt like even showing up on school events, a lot of the parents and other adults would be communicating, they would be networking, and then it would always seem like the Asian parents would be kind of standing in the side. And because I didn't live with my family, there wasn't that many times where my mom would visit my school because she would always be in Korea. Of course, my older brother as well, he doesn't really speak English very fluently. And growing up, I didn't really like showing my family in front of other people. The fact that they didn't really speak English fluently, it embarrassed me because my friends' parents would all talk so easily, laughing and making connections. Meanwhile, my family would just look like they just stand awkwardly to the side, struggling to communicate. I feel like at the time, I was scared that my friends would see them as awkward or weird, and by extension, also see me as weird too. So oftentimes I would just rush conversations and cut them short so that I don't have to introduce them to other people. And it wasn't really because I didn't love them. I think it was because I just didn't want to feel like an outsider. I never really experienced that in my life, so I didn't really know how to deal with it. I didn't know what to feel, I didn't know how to feel, and also like the personal things going on at home, the guardians that I was living with. There was a lot of conflicts which gave me a lot of stress and trauma that kind of made me immediately associate them as some people that I'm not really proud of. So those things really added up for me to want to be something other than Asian. So as a consequence, I wanted so badly to be seen as whitewashed. I thought that was like a compliment to me. I wanted to be seen as the Asian kid who wasn't too Asian. Kind of messed up to kind of think back at it because me right now would never tolerate such things. At that time, I just really wanted to fit in. I wanted to be seen as neutral. So that also meant that I wouldn't be seen as too different from the cultural norm that I experienced at school at the time that was normalized. And from then on, I think I started distancing myself from doing things that were seen to be too Korean. And that led me to refusing to hang out with different Korean kids at school because I just didn't want to be seen as one of them. And that's messed up. And honestly, when I look back at it, I was really insecure about it. I was a really insecure kid. I just didn't know that embracing myself, embracing my ethnicity, being proud of where I'm from was the right thing to do because I just wanted to fit in. So all I could think of was just doing my best to act like the person that I'm really not, which means purposefully avoiding hanging out with the Korean community, just kind of distancing myself from people that are from the same roots, And the worst part is I didn't even realize what I was doing. but I also think it's related to the way that I was brought up, the way I grew up. I didn't live with my family in Kenya, who I could be myself around with. Not getting along well with the guardians or people that I lived with at the time, that really led me to have more resentment towards the Korean community. And also not having the father figure, it also really impacted me a lot in a way that I didn't really have like this firm foundation that was holding me from, I think digressing or going into some different path. For a while, I really thought I was that guy. I talked about it in the other video, but even though deeply I did not believe it, I really thought that I was good at everything. And I really thought that the culture that I was adapting, the culture that really suited me the most was the Western culture. I always felt kind of alone. When I lived with my guardians in the first few years, I didn't feel like I was getting enough support emotionally. All I could think of was just surviving at the time. And with the family issue that was going on at home, the only place that I found joy and peace was school, right? It was just going to school, being in different culture, because my friends at school didn't know what was going on at home. They didn't really see the struggles that I was having. They didn't really know the full context of why I was struggling. So being outside and getting out of the house for me was my getaway, was my only time where I felt truly peaceful. I think that was one of the reasons why I was drawn and connected to the Western culture, because that was the place. That was a place of escape. That was a place where I felt like I could truly be myself and not be judged for my actions. So I had this big identity crisis. And when I heard that I was coming back to Korea for university, I had a lot of arguments with my mom because I think I was mad at the whole world for just kind of trying to put me back into this world that I was traumatized from. And I didn't want to go back. I truly felt like going back home would mean that I have to go through the trauma and the stress and the anxiety. And I really believed that they were waiting for me. I fought with my mom a lot because I just wanted to go to the States, or I just wanted to go to the university that was not in Korea. It was that deep. The identity crisis, the fact that I didn't really like being Asian, the fact that I was ashamed of my own culture, it was really that deep. And then I had a turning point. So when I was in Kenya up until high school, I had this mindset where I was good at everything, I'm not going to fail. I wasn't really aware of how the real world worked. And then I came back to Korea, right? When I applied to the universities, like the really top prestigious ones, looking back at it, I was very audacious. When I didn't really get into any, that really hit me. I was at the rock bottom because I didn't have any place to go to. Not going to the university right away was kind of like a failure. I took it really hard and I didn't know what to do with my life. And that's when I got to this like survival mode to study hard and then just get into the university. So that's what I did. And that's when I got really humble, because that's the first time when I realized that the world doesn't go the way that I want it to go. The reality is different. And being surrounded by people in my own ethnicity, I started shifting my perspective. And the westernized personality and the whole identity crisis that I had slowly kind of faded away because I was no longer surrounded by people that are different from me. Like, I could seek international community and still communicate with people that are from different backgrounds, and I really love doing that. But I wasn't really fully back on thinking, oh, I'm so proud to be Korean. Like, this is my root, this is my culture. I didn't really have that mindset. And then I went to the military. And that changed everything. When I went to KATUSO, which is a Korean augmentation to the US Army, it's like a program that started from the Korean War. Because Korea and US have a very strong military alliance, they have this program where country selects, limited number of people who can speak English at the same time that can work as like a mediator regarding the translation for, smooth operation. And I was thankfully selected as one of the KATUSOs, which allowed me to serve alongside the Korea and US counterparts and represent my country. I think for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who took pride in being Korean. People who saw our language, culture, and our history as something to be very proud of. And that really changed everything. That really changed the way I see the world. That really changed the way I see myself, most importantly. And it's something that I should be proud of, not something that I should hide. And for the first time, I started to see it that way too. I don't know, it was just something about having a flag in my arm and going to work every day, representing my country, wanting to be the best version or best example. So that allowed me to change the way I act or conduct myself professionally. But to me, that was like the time where I devoted my 18 months of my time to really think about who I really am. And when I was in the military, I started studying Korean history to kind of learn my own culture, what I'm really fighting for, who are those people that built everything for us to really enjoy life like this. And that really changed my perspective. My identity crisis was ironically fixed when I was serving my mandatory military service. I really wanted to take that time to reflect on myself, and that really worked. So I think before I went to the military versus after I came back out from the military, I changed a lot. I was able to embrace the beautiful culture that I'm part of, the history that I should be very proud of as well. And I realized all those years, the feeling of shame that I felt in Kenya, all the experiences that I went through were the very things that made me who I am. No matter how much I could try to change and how much I try to blend in with different culture, I always remembered that I'm still Korean, and that doesn't change wherever I go till the day I die. And when I look back at this identity crisis of growing up in Kenya in American school as a Korean, I really needed those times. Those times really made me reflect on myself. It taught me the life lessons the hard way, but I'm really thankful of it, and I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change the way how I learned everything. Coming back to Korea was a way for me to be more humble. It was a time that helped me to reflect on who I really am, where I'm really from. I realized all the things that I was ashamed of were the very things that really made me who I am. The language, the culture, the history, the food, the customs, the way that we are, Korean accent that we have when we speak English. Those are none of the things that I should be ashamed of, because that's just who we are. And when I look back at it, I just spent so much of my time trying to erase myself. But the truth is, no matter how much I try to change myself, I was always going to be Asian. I was always going to be Korean. And the real question that I always failed to ask myself at that time was I going to hate the fact that I'm Korean, or was I going to own it? Right now, I'm super proud. I love my country. I love my culture, I love the food that we have, and I love my own identity. And I love that my mom has an accent, because it means that she built a life in a language that wasn't her own. And I love that my Korean food smells strong, because that's the smell of my roots. But most importantly, I love the fact that I'm different, because that's what truly makes me, me. So if you've ever felt like I did, like you weren't enough, or like you felt like you had to change to be accepted, just know this. You don't have to erase yourself to fit in. You don't need to be less of yourself to be worthy. You just need to be you. And that's enough. Embrace who you are, because who you are is enough. We all go through this phase, especially nowadays. We live in this world where we don't just stay in one place. We go from this place to the other, and we live there for a while, and then we go to the other place, and we feel like our heart belongs not in just one place, but in many places. But even in those moments, accepting yourself, where you're from, the culture that you have, is very important. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's definitely something that you really need to learn how to live with. Where you're from, which culture you belong, it'll always be in you wherever you go. No matter how much you try to change, to be accepted, to fit in, to blend in with the whole community that you're in, stay yourself. Looking back at it, I was so insecure. I was so immature as well. Maybe it's also because of the fact that I grew up without my family. I always felt stressed when I was living in Kenya, how things were not really working out well for my family, and I was constantly stressed. So a different culture or a different identity was something for me to rely on, be dependent on. The truth is, the fact that I'm Korean, the fact that I'm from this beautiful place with beautiful culture and food and everything, does not change wherever I go. So it's not really about running away from it. It's about owning it, embracing it, and learning how to live with it. You just have to have this firm foundation that you belong here, but you're still able to explore other options and make meaningful and valuable connections from that. You could still be yourself and still go and meet people that are different from you and have those really meaningful connections. And that's possible. You don't have to change the way you act, change the way you speak in order for you to be accepted by them. You can still be yourself, be genuine, be loving, be kind, and find commonality and similarities with people from different cultures. And I think that's really the best way to accept who you really are as a person. I don't really think I'm insecure about my identity anymore because I'm so proud and I'm so confident. So yeah, that was my little story. It's deeply personal, and I don't think I really talked about this enough anywhere, but I feel like it's a story that's part of me that shaped me to be the person that I am right now. And it had a really big and important impact on me, on how I see life, how I view myself, most importantly. So if you made it to the end of the video, you're a real one. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you guys are doing well wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.